If you grill it, he will come.
Hey.
Hey.
Is this heaven?
Nope. It's Fareway.
A fuel choice that even rivals can agree on? Now that's worth the hype. Cheaper, cleaner, and homegrown. Pump it up with unleaded 88.
Chris Hassel, Andrew Downs. It's time for Instant Iowa. Immediate analysis and reaction presented by Fareway Meat Grocery. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Iowa Everywhere.
And here we go. It's the very first episode of Instant Iowa. And like we said, instantly when the game ends, we are coming to you live from the Channel Seed Studios. It is Instant Iowa presented by Fareway Meat Grocery. Chris Hassel alongside my good friend, Andrew Downs, who's got the double Tiger Hawk. Andrew, such a crazy juxtaposition for us because you were the one in the first half that was just down in the dumps and you didn't see it turning around. And I said, hang on, buddy. Keep your head up. There's still time to go. And what a turnaround in the second half as Iowa runs away 40-0 against Illinois State.
And now you have to find something bad about that second half to be upset about. We are back, baby. We're so back. That was incredible. That second half was, I mean, that it felt like washing away. Like that was like a baptism, right? Like we needed that as Hawkeye fans. It's been so long. It had been 12 quarters since they had scored a touchdown. It's been so long since we've seen anything like that. And of course, it's Illinois State, and we'll put it all in perspective throughout the show here. But right now, like, how could you not feel good about what we just saw in the second half?
The only people that might not be feeling good are the Iowa fans who thought they had a locked under if they got it at 39.5 or 38.5 or even down at 37.5 when the game kicked. A few hours before kickoff, it was at 40.5. So I hope if you played the under, like I know a lot of people do on Iowa games, I hope you got it before things started crashing down because of some of the suspensions in the first half, because of some of the injuries on offense. I thought this was going to be a completely different show, and I think you did too in that first half. But I feel like that, like you said, we kind of washed our sins away in that second half. And I don't know that we need to focus that much on the problems of the first half because that second half was as good as we've seen offensively from an Iowa team in years, I would say. You scored 34 points in the second half. Big Ten Network says that's the most Iowa has scored in a second half since 2017 against Nebraska.
Wow. And I mean, 3 wide receiver touchdowns in the second half. That's more than they had 2 years ago. That's the same number that they had last season. I mean, the numbers that are going to come out of this, those stats, those fun little stats that people come up with are just going to be fun to soak up the rest of the weekend because there's going to be so many like that. The first time, wide receivers had 2 touchdowns in a game since X, the first time that this has happened. And as you said, like it exercised the demons from the first half. The offensive line really kind of struggled to open up holes in that first half, but a big part of that was probably because we hadn't made them stay honest with the passing game at all. Cade McNamara was clearly uncomfortable in that first half, and maybe that's what he needed to shake off some of that rust. And so looked much better. Caleb Johnson coming back. And that's another thing. With some of the suspensions, you didn't have Caleb Brown in the game. You didn't have Seth Anderson with an injury. So you're already without a couple of your top wide receivers or the guys you expect to be your top wide receivers. And you're without Caleb Johnson in that first half. And he showed today that, he was the leading rusher 2 years ago. He was third on the depth chart coming into this game. I don't think he's going to be third for that much longer playing like that.
And he might have been down there just because they knew that the first half suspension was coming and he wasn't going to be able to obviously start the game. And that's why we saw Kamari Moulton at the start. Now, I was okay with what Moulton did in that first half. I thought it was a byproduct of not being able to throw the ball downfield. When you've got Illinois State putting 8, 9 guys in the box, just daring you to throw the ball, and you can't, and you continue to try to run it, and you're running into a wall, that's what happens. And you know what? In that second half, after Cade McNamara proved he could throw the ball down the field, then all of a sudden, boom, 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 holes open up, and you have big explosive plays out of the running game. We're here to try to keep things into perspective, right? Because it is an FCS team, and it's not even a top 10 FCS team. But this is Iowa we're talking about. This is Iowa's offense, and the way we were feeling at halftime, I think has just allowed us to just open up our hearts a little bit. Yeah. And think, you know what? Maybe this Tim Lester offense is going to work. I mean, work it's all relative. But Cade McNamara looked like the quarterback we thought we were getting when they gave him a bunch of money in the portal
when they illegally recruited him. Yeah.
That's why you take a chance and you get caught and Ferentz serves the game suspension. Speaking of that, credit to Seth Wallace for I enjoyed his halftime interview when he said, look, we are just not executing. And then I don't know what he said to the guys at halftime, but it was a completely different offense in that second half. The defense was there the whole way. And the defense forced multiple turnovers in the first 7 or 8 minutes of the game, continued to do their thing. It was all about the offense. This whole season is about the offense. And maybe Cade McNamara just needed to knock the cobwebs off because he looked dreadful in that first half. He was throwing off his back foot. He was even throwing like fadeaway passes. Even when he wasn't off his back foot, he was kind of fading away. Like he was a little bit, I don't know if he's worried about being hit, not 100% confident in the knee. I don't know. And he takes off and runs, and he starts to feel a little bit better. And that's the Cade McNamara. That's why this Cade McNamara version that we saw today, I thought was better than any Cade McNamara version we saw last year because you add in the fact that he's not a statue anymore. He can move, and he can be slippery at times.
And he's not afraid to do that, obviously. And you're exactly right. I think he had to get comfortable. He had to knock some of that rust off. You remember, he hasn't played healthy in a real college football game in like 2.5 years. He wasn't healthy at all last season. He's never been healthy in a Hawkeye uniform. We didn't see him look very good in the fall camp. I know you and Williams talked about that quite a bit. And just kind of what we were expecting from him. I really wanted to see Brendan Sullivan at the end of that first half. I was so worried about this, right? I mean, and you knew it wasn't going to happen. But obviously, I don't know if there were halftime. It's going to be interesting to see what Cade says, what Tim Lester says after this game, what the coaching staff says. Were there adjustments made at halftime, or was it really just a confidence thing? And now that because Cade, you can tell, is a guy with some swagger. And I know one of the worries about putting Brendan Sullivan in or even talking really good about him in the offseason was you don't want to mess with Cade's mentality, right? And that can be good and bad. It's bad if it goes wrong because he can kind of get into his own head and obviously things don't work well. But it can be good too. And if he has some momentum and some confidence and he comes out of this game feeling good about where he is, where this offense is, where this offensive line is, then we could see a Cade McNamara much like the one at Michigan a few years ago. And if Iowa gets that Cade McNamara, watch the heck out because they could be a really good team. As you said, the defense did exactly what we expected them to do. That doesn't make it less remarkable.
Yeah.
I was on the CW pod earlier this week, and Chris has this thing where he believes that this Iowa turnover thing is a fluke or it's going to regress to the mean, and it just doesn't happen. I don't believe it. The evidence is all to the contrary. Those big turnovers in the first half when the offense wasn't doing much, you had Caden Weechin almost score a touchdown on a punt return. So if the things like the defense and the special teams are where they've been the last couple of years, as we've all said for a long time, you don't have to have an elite offense. You have to have a decent offense, a competent offense, one that can hold on to the ball and put up a few points. It's Illinois State, but this offense looks like one that can hold on to the ball and put up a few points, and that makes Iowa a scary team.
All I've been asking for is the 99th best offense in the country.
You got it, baby.
I'm here to tell you they're going to be ranked higher than 99 after week 1. Now, things might change a little bit next week with Iowa State coming into town. This is Instant Iowa, presented by Fareway Meat and Grocery here on Iowa Everywhere. Chris Hassel and Andrew Downs. We're going to do this every single Iowa game. Even on, there's a Friday game that won't end until like after midnight.
That's going to be fun.
I think we're going to be up late with you guys. We wanted to put together a live show that has immediate reaction while you kind of wait for the press conferences and all that to start. And there's still other avenues for those kinds of shows like Sound Off on WHO and call-ins and all that. We are monitoring your messages. We've had about 50 comments already, and we will get to some of those throughout the show. But I wanted to share with you just something that I wrote down before the game. I wrote down a bunch of things that I just wanted to see from Iowa. And it was mostly on offense. But let's go through this checklist. Cade McNamara complete multiple passes 15-plus yards down the field. Check.
Yeah.
Cade McNamara to be 60% or better throwing the football. Check. 68% in this game. He was 21 for 31. And Cade McNamara finishes with 251 yards and 3 touchdowns. I wanted Luke Lachey, and I'm being conservative here because this is the Iowa offense. I wanted Luke Lachey to be targeted at least 5 times. He was targeted 8 times. He caught 6 balls for 63 yards. I didn't want to see Iowa give up a sack, and they did not. Iowa was not sacked in this game, and I thought that the pass protection, even when the run blocking was struggling in the first half, I thought the pass pro was great. I wanted a Lester imprint. I wanted to see that this was a different offense. Didn't see a lot of that early, but you saw it in that second half, and you saw how the passing game can open up the run game, and I liked how Cade threw it down the field a few times, let his big guys try to come down with the football. The first one was underthrown to Lachey in the first quarter. It was incomplete. He tried it again in the second half. That time it worked. I wanted Sullivan to get some playing time. Hey, he got in at the end of the game.
There you go.
But Cade was so good. I'm very thankful they didn't make a change. On defense, I wanted no explosives. I don't think they gave up an explosive play.
Nope.
I wanted to force multiple turnovers. They checked that off in the first 8 minutes of the game. On special teams, I wanted solid field goal kicking because how bad was it at the end of last season with Drew Stevens? It was really bad. Today, hit them both. Perfect. And I wanted solid punting, punt returning, and coverage. Look, the punting wasn't great from Reese Dagan, but it was good enough. And Weegan looks like he could be a star punt returner. So I put all that stuff down expecting, I don't know, maybe they would get to half of it. They checked every single box that I put down here before the game. That's a win.
Which, again, we have to put into context because, on one hand, it's against an FCS team. But on the other hand, as you just said, these are things we wanted to see from a good Big Ten team against an FCS team. And then to do most of that in the second half is pretty remarkable as well after kind of having to shake that rust off. But I had some of those same notes written down as well. And in the first half, that was one of my real concerns was Cade not throwing the ball down the field at all. Just take a shot, man. And as you said, he underthrew Lachey on that one. Probably should have been a touchdown there. He wants to have that one back, I'm sure. But there were a handful of times where he checked down. It was challenge these guys, show that we have that in the playbook, and that could open things up left and right. And so that was fantastic. You talk about the punting game. As you said, it's not going to be Tory Taylor. Maybe it will when he's a senior. It's one of those. Reese Dakin was never going to come in and be the best punter in the country. He didn't have to be today. And that was really good. It was good to see Drew Stevens out there. Weegan's going to take a couple of back this year. He's explosive. We saw that in glimpses last year, but man, he looked great today.
A penalty called that back, and the penalties in the first half were very concerning because Iowa has been one of the better teams penalty-wise in the country for years. Last year, they were top 5. They were being penalized 3.6 a game. First half, 6 penalties. Second half, 1 penalty.
And those 6 penalties came at such bad times. They killed Iowa over and over again, which is such an unlike Iowa thing. And that again was one of the reasons I was so pessimistic in that first half, was like, not only are they not executing the way you wanted to, they were shooting themselves in their own foot a couple of different times, which is just such an un-Iowa thing to do.
Iowa wins it 40-0 over Illinois State, and 34 points in a second half explosion by Cade McNamara. I'm interested to hear in all the post game and the lead up to next week, media days and all that, like what changed for Cade? What did you see in that second half that flipped that switch? Because he looked like a completely different quarterback.
He looked so much more comfortable. He wasn't throwing off that back foot. And that was such a bad thing in that first half. He was throwing off the back foot. He looked rattled. In that second half, it almost was like he needed to take a hit or two and kind of, again, shake that rust off, get back into the game. And he looked so much more comfortable. He looked like he had the faith in his receivers to throw it up. That second touchdown by Vanderzee, who's a star in the making, we hope. We've seen Oliver Martin score a touchdown in his first Hawkeye game and then not do much. But
that's true, but Vanderzee showed a bunch. It wasn't like one flash in the pan. He looked the part, and he was great. And I trust the opinion of Sean Bach from 24/7 Sports, who reminded us today on X that he said this was the biggest win Iowa had in this class, was to get Vanderzee and not let him go to Ames.
That's incredible, because that's an Iowa kid, 6'4", 207, true freshman. And as you said, he made that great catch, like the Randy Moss, like picked the ball out of the air among those defenders for his second touchdown. But he did more than just that. Had a couple of really nice catches for first downs. Had obviously that first touchdown. He had 5 catches, 66 yards, and a couple of touchdowns. Just a solid effort out of him. And again, remember, Caleb Brown is supposed to be the stud of this wide receiving core. He was out today because of the OWI in the offseason. Seth Anderson is a guy who we've talked a lot about and showed, again, glimpses of playing well last season. He was out today with an injury. And so this is a receiving core. They didn't even lean on Luke Lachey as much as I thought maybe they would have to at some point. If these receivers can just get into the game a little bit, what that's going to do, not just for this team, Chris, but we've talked a lot about the potential for recruiting and developing wide receivers. And if you're a wide receiver, why would you go to Iowa right now? All they have to do is show that you can make some plays, put up some stats, and win some games in a Hawkeye uniform, and they'll be able to grab a receiver or two out of each class and build up this room pretty quickly. Who knows how good Bud Meyer will be as a wide receiver coach, but again, it can only go up from here with this wide receiver room, and Reese Vanderzee looks like the real thing.
Wide receivers, not something that I thought was going to be a positive coming out of the first game of the season, but Vanderzee, 5 catches for 66 yards, 2 touchdowns. Gill, 3 catches, 46 yards, and a touchdown. Like you said, I mean, you can come in and you can make an impact right away in this Iowa receivers room, and even though it took to the third quarter in this game, but the Hawkeyes, putting a scare into us in that first half, and now I feel way better than I thought I would even before the game started. Yeah. I thought this was going to be just a total slog all the way through. I think my game prediction at IowaEverywhere.com in the Randy Peterson article was something like 23-6, and it was headed that way. I didn't think we would see them open it up as much as they did. I think when you think Ferentz is out, it's game one. You've got Iowa State on the horizon. You've got a quarterback who hasn't seen action in a long time. I didn't see Iowa putting the ball in the air 31 times. McNamara 21 for 31. They ran the ball 40 times. So, yeah, you still ran it more, but that's a pretty even split there. And I liked that. That's one of the things I said on Two Guys this week. I didn't want Iowa to just get by with the running game and just kind of get through it and get to Cy-Hawk Week without having shown something through the air, without getting some confidence from Cade McNamara and the receivers and the tight ends. And I don't know if I could feel much better right now going into this game because of that. I'm not saying I'm going to even change my pick because I did pick Iowa State to win the game.
Of course you did. You're a Cyclone.
Oh, stop it. Jeez. I'm a St. Ambrose Fighting Bee. You got the hat right here. Someone asked me where my St. Ambrose stuff was, right here.
Love it.
So how are you feeling, AD, going into Cyhawk week now?
Yeah, I feel really good, and it's going to be interesting to see how Iowa State looks this afternoon. But again, you're not gonna learn a whole lot about that team. This game is always a difficult game. I expect Iowa State to come in and for Matt Campbell to kind of stubbornly play the same way that they've played Iowa in his entire tenure, and that tends to go Iowa's way. They don't mind playing a slow down game. I don't think Rocco Beck's going to come in and throw the ball 50 times. I think Iowa's defense is going to do what they always do. I think they'll be able to mostly shut down Iowa State's run. I think the defensive backfield, who played great today, we talk about how good they are. We almost didn't even talk about Cooper DeJean not being a part of this team because we have so much faith in Phil Parker and this defense to continue to be elite, and they did exactly that today. So I expect that to continue. I think being in Iowa City, that's certainly a benefit for Iowa. So yeah, I feel really good going into that game. I pick Iowa to win every year, and I'm going to pick them again. But no, I feel good about this. And as you said, we showed some things that maybe they are going to have to adjust for now. And this offense was never going to be completely different, right? So anybody expecting this to look a lot different, it doesn't need to look a lot different. It just needs to look more competent.
The result just needs to be a little different.
That's exactly right. And that's what we got today. You're going to have a balanced offense when it comes to a number of plays on the ground and through the air. That's going to happen. You're going to have a lot of tight end balls. You're not going to see a lot of deep shots. You want to see a few of those. But again, as you said, the results just have to be different, and they certainly were today. So I feel really good going into this week. It doesn't seem like they suffered a lot of injuries. There may have been one, Logan Jones, on the offensive line. We'll see what that is in the post game. But it's going to be interesting to see what Iowa State looks like this afternoon. And now Iowa has given them a lot of things to think about heading into next Saturday.
Yeah, for those of you listening to the podcast version, we're doing this pod right at the conclusion of the Iowa game. The Iowa State game hasn't even started yet against North Dakota, so we're not sure how they're going to look, but we're going to have a lot more coverage, obviously, moving forward. We'll have Cyclone Reaction on Cyclone Sunday tomorrow with Ben Bruns, and then, obviously, we really ramp up this week. It's RVTV week at WHO in Des Moines, and Murph and Andy will be back on Iowa Everywhere at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Murph, Andy, and AD. Really exciting times right now. I'm feeling it with you guys coming on board, this show starting, and Iowa looking like they could be somewhat competent offensively, and Cade McNamara proving that the right decision was made. Because Just imagine this for a second. What if Brendan Sullivan was the one that had that performance in the second half? Like if he was placed into the game and he did that, we would be saying, "Oh my God, he's going to be a Heisman Trophy candidate. He's going to be a star."
Yep.
They stuck with Cade, and I don't know if Kirk Ferentz said, "Look, no matter what happened, we're sticking with Cade." I could see him doing that. The Big Ten Network cameras focused on Sullivan in the first quarter. There were boos. I know a lot of you listening right now were at the game. I don't know if I would have booed, but you could hear it on TV, and I'm sure it was even louder in the stadium because Iowa just was not ready in that first half. And whatever was done by Seth Wallace at halftime, some people have joked and said that Kirk Ferentz fell asleep on the sofa, and they got word from Mary that, hey, do what you want in the second half. Open things up. He's asleep. I don't know, but I'm excited after this 40-0 win.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And man, you understand, I guess, why people were booing after this first couple of 3-and-outs. I was feeling it in my living room. It just felt like the same old, and you really could look at the entire fall and see, oh my God, we're setting ourselves up for this again. I tweeted at some point, I'm in an abusive relationship with Hawkeye football. I keep coming back. I keep, every summer I talk myself into it. Every Saturday morning, I wake up jacked up. I'm playing the fight song. I'm putting on the Tiger Hawks. I'm getting the kids excited. We had wings and pretzels and everything today. We're all excited. And then 8 minutes into the game, I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I'm pissed off. And it's just like, man, why do I do this to myself over and over again? And it's going to take a few more games like this, maybe even a few more seasons like this, where the offense is competent again, for fans to really kind of get over the trauma that we've been through the last 3 or 4 years. Because come Saturday afternoon, regardless of this second half, if Iowa goes 3-and-out, even if they're stopping Iowa State, if Iowa goes 3-and-out a couple of times in a row to start that game against Iowa State next week, and Cade McNamara doesn't look good, or they're just running right into the line like they did this game, if that happens, people are going to boo again.
Well, it's not going to happen, Andrew, because they figured it out. I mean, they figured it out, and now this is going to be a top 5 offense in the Big Ten moving forward. No. Logan says, I was never worried. Lester has said over and over again he likes to establish the run. He did that in the first half, then let it rip in the second. Man was playing chess, not checkers. I feel really good about Tim Lester right now.
I do too. Yeah,
I felt good coming in. I just didn't know if he had the players. I didn't know if he had the pieces, and I didn't know if Cade had it mentally. But Cade showing what he did in the second half, and Lester's new system and competency, I think that we might have just turned the corner.
I think you're right. And then, I mean, we shouldn't go too far without spending some time giving love to this defense again, because just because they did what we expected doesn't mean it's any less remarkable. I mean, obviously you pitch a shutout. Aaron Graves had 3 sacks.
He was great.
That defensive line looked good all day. Those linebackers, who might be the best core in the country, looked fantastic. And then all of the D-backs, again, we lost Cooper DeJean, right? Like a guy who coaches were comparing to Niall Kinnick last season. A guy who was like single-handedly carrying this team at times, went to the NFL, and it was all off season. It was kind of like, wow, it was like not even one of the big talking points of the off season, because we had so much faith in these other players, in Phil Parker, and in what Iowa's been able to do in his tenure, that we just assumed it was going to look the same, and it did. And it's Illinois State. We'll see how they look against Rocco Becht and Iowa State and Abu Sama and all those players next Saturday. But there's no reason to expect it's not going to look the same, because that's what it's looked like the last several seasons.
Iowa's defense only gave up 189 yards of offense to Iowa's 492. Woo. It's a shutout, 40-0. Hawks got 3 points in the first quarter, 3 points in the second quarter, and then third quarter it all clicked. 13 in the third, 21 in the fourth, and Iowa hits the kickoff total over all by themselves in this game. Some asking in the comments, when's the last time they scored 40 points in a game? Well, they did it last year. In that, was it Western Michigan that they played? It was a 41-10 win, September the 16th. That was the last time, and Cade McNamara was still, he was still playing. He wasn't 100% healthy. But that was the last time Iowa even threw multiple touchdown passes in a game. And
they hadn't scored a touchdown in 12 quarters at halftime of this game. They didn't score in the second half against Nebraska. They didn't score a touchdown in the Big Ten championship game. They didn't score a touchdown in the bowl game, and they didn't score a touchdown in the first half of this game. 12 straight quarters without a touchdown. And they, again, just say it over and over, they exercised some demons in that second half.
Exercise the demons.
For themselves, clearly within Cade McNamara's own head, probably within that offensive line. And then you have Caleb Johnson going through for 64 yards. He's got to be feeling good about that. And then for all of us fans who, again, after that first half, we're really gripping. Like, oh, my God, what is this season going to look like? Have we talked ourselves into being idiots again? And it turns out maybe not. Maybe not.
Well, as excited as I am right now, I'm trying to tap the brakes just a little bit. Trying to remind myself it was just one half. It was an FCS team.
Nah, man, we're back.
I certainly feel a lot better than I did in the first half, and better than I thought I would coming out of this game going into Cyhawk week.
You said that earlier, and that's a really good point. Like, even coming into this game with if I could like have drawn up what would happen, I don't know that I would have felt better about it than I do right now. I didn't expect to feel this good about what I saw from this offense, from the team as a whole. Again, you keep it in perspective. It's the first game of the year, but they've struggled in games like this. Certainly offensively, they haven't shown the firepower that they showed in that second half. And so I feel fantastic right now. Even in the first half, for me, it was mostly just a feeling about Cade. I didn't hate what they showed on offense because I thought that there were plays there to be made. If Cade throws a better ball, it's a touchdown in the first quarter. Instead, it's an incomplete pass. He had Moulton out in the flat on a play where he just totally threw it awry, where he would have had at least 15, maybe 20 yards and gotten into field goal range with that one play. I felt like the plays were there. Cade just wasn't able to make them. But I don't know. Something changed, I feel like, when he scampered that first time, even though I think it was called back. It was called back, yeah. I just, something changed there for him, and it was like quarterbacks often say, and even some other skill position players, I don't feel like I'm really in it until I get hit, until I get hit, and then things really get going. Maybe when Cade got out in the open field, started to feel better about that leg, because I'm holding my breath, even though he technically right now is 100% healthy. He says he's not worried about the knee. He's a guy that's injury prone. He's had 2 major knee injuries, and out there in the open field, I'm just thinking, get down, get down, get down, get down. And even though that was called back, we saw it again in the second half on a play where he was dead to rights. And we haven't seen a Hawkeye quarterback be able to do something like that since I guess it would be Nate Stanley, kind of just standing up, letting bodies fall off of him. Exactly. As he's not fast or anything. No, but he had that Stanley, great quarterback sneak. Yeah, you could be like a dog biting his ankle and still throwing the touchdown against Ohio State. And we saw a little bit of that in Cade McNamara with that second Vanderzee touchdown, because he got hit pretty hard there. Yeah. And he had to kind of float that up and, again, trust that his true freshman wide receiver. I saw Luke Lachey was kind of right there too, but Vanderzee went up and nabbed that. And you're right. I think Cade had to get hit a couple of times. He had to run the ball just playing a little backyard football, baby. That's all we're doing. And Iowa wins it 40-0 against Illinois State heading into Cyhawk Week. This is the very first episode of Instant Iowa. Chris Hassel with Andrew Downs. We sure appreciate everybody tuning in, and we're going to do this every single week. And there might be some games where we come on even before the game ends. I mean, we were close to doing that today, but we got up as soon as the game ends, and hopefully we kind of bridge a gap from the end of the game to the post-game conversations and then the call-in shows and all that. My dad's like, why don't you take calls? I said, Dad, this is Iowa everywhere. This is a new platform. We've got commenters. We're not going to open up the phone lines here. If you want that, check out WHO Radio Sound Off or whatever they have over on WMT in Cedar Rapids. They do a great job as well. Next week, though, AD. Yeah. We might have to call in a sub for you because you're going to be in the hospital, correct? I am, yeah. So I'm having my third and final surgery of the summer. All right. Hopefully. This is it. Crossed. Okay. This will be it. They're putting me back together on Friday morning. And so I don't expect to be out of the hospital by showtime Saturday. I'm going to check and see how the hospital Wi-Fi is. Maybe I can at least join for like a few minutes, but we'll find somebody else to cover. But that's the only game I plan to miss. Like you said, that UCLA game on a Friday night. It's going to be even later for you out there on the East Coast. That'll be fun. And I'm so excited to do this. Like you said, we saw kind of a gap in, there's so much Hawkeye content, and it's great. It's a really good space right now. We saw kind of a gap where these radio shows have to wait for the network to end. There's a lot of instant reaction type podcasts and things, but those get recorded and then posted. A lot of them are done by, guys like Chad Leisigo, who are spending 2 hours after the game talking to players and coaches and writing stories, and then they get on and say what they feel. We want this to be emotional. I think there's a place for both of those things, right? The instant emotional analysis without really hearing what the coaches have said or diving too far into the stats, just kind of how we feel about the game. Give everybody that opportunity to vent or celebrate on a day like this. And then, there's room for then the kind of more thoughtful analysis. And by the time, 8:30 a.m. hits on Monday, I'm sure you'll have more perspective and more to say about this game on Two Guys here on Iowa Everywhere. I'll have more to say by the time Murph and Andy comes around at 1 o'clock on Saturday, or on Monday rather. And so I just think this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have fun with it. We're not going to sugarcoat much. You and I have very different perspectives on things.
I would have been letting a few curse words fly if things continued to go.
If we had done a halftime show, the feeling would have been a heck of a lot different.
I'm really proud of myself because I bit my tongue, so to speak. I didn't tweet that McNamara needs to be benched right now, that you got to get Sullivan out there, that this is an absolute disaster. I saw that there, like I said, there were plays to be made, and Cade was close. He just needs to, get over the hump a little. I didn't expect what happened to actually go down. I mean, I thought that Chris Williams called me up at halftime, and he didn't get to see any of the first half, and he goes, "How bad is it?" I was like, "It's basically exactly what you would expect if Deacon Hill was still the quarterback. It was 6-0." And he said, "Oh my God, are they gonna lose? Are they gonna fucking lose?" And I said, "No, I mean I see like a 20-0 win. I think they're gonna hit a couple of big plays in the second half." But
I live bet the under 22.5 at halftime.
22.5.
Yeah,
and Iowa ends up
felt pretty good about it for
40.
a while.
We don't know how long we're gonna go on each game. That's kind of the beauty of it as well. We'll go as long as we think we need to. Some games we might go 20 minutes. Some games we might go an hour and a half. I don't know. It's going to depend on what we have to talk about. I think we probably would have gone a lot longer today had this been a repeat of what we saw in the first half and the second half, and like a 12-0 win or something to that effect. But I feel like we've covered most of the bases for now. Seth Wallace for the halftime adjustments.
Yep.
And for not making some knee-jerk reaction to put Brennan Sullivan in the game. Credit to Cade McNamara for maybe getting over the hump mentally after his injury. He finally looked like the guy we thought we would see. And credit to Tim Lester, who's been positive all throughout. We had been hearing that they actually like the receivers. They actually like the offensive line. And you know what? In the second half, we saw it all come together.
Yeah, we saw why. We saw what it's the first time in a while we've heard all the good things in the offseason and then actually seen them executed on the field in week 1. And yeah, man, that's got to make you feel good, I think.
I feel great. I feel fantastic. And thank you to everyone who has tuned in, whether you're listening live right now or on the podcast later. If you missed the first part of this and you caught the tail end live, we will immediately post the podcast version of this afterwards, but we have what appears to be a record number of live viewers for an Iowa Everywhere show, and I think it's only going to continue to grow as we move forward. Next week, it's the Cy-Hawk game. Woo! And Andrew's surgery. He'll be in the hospital for probably that entire week if the Hawkeyes don't win that game. For Andrew Downs, appreciate everybody listening to Instant Iowa presented by Fareway from the Channel Seed Studios. I'm Chris Hassel. We will talk to you on Monday. 2 Guys in the morning, and then Murph and Andy at 1 Central.